Hey, hello and welcome. It's been some time, but now we're back, and today is kind of a challenging day because this will be the first day of my RTS challenge, which I set the goal to myself I need to finish in a few days, and then do a nice tutorial video about it. So let's see how this goes. And yeah, I just started 1 hour ago, and already the first challenges came up, of course. And yeah, so let's just dive into it. So what we're seeing is my current iteration of the tiny little engine I'm writing, and I'm constantly refactoring, so it's looking a little bit different than last time. It's a little bit more object oriented, still on the light side though. I would say it's not too heavy, still kind of lightweight. But yeah, a little bit. And the first challenge that we have today is I'm already thinking how to communicate between different levels in my game. So as I said, this will be an RTS, and so there will be at least a few, what do we call them, stages or levels or maps or scenes or whatever you want to call them. I don't call them scenes because scenes is already used in my vocabulary here, because a scene is a very specific thing here in my little universe. So I call it stage. And what the question is at the moment is, you see here I have my games folder, so I'm in my main menu. So you see there is not a lot going on here now, but a little bit. And so I will just show you what I have. It's an error. That's fine. Cannot compile from every file. That's a little bit of a problem here with VS Code. So I also switched to VS Code because I thought it's probably more easy to obtain for a lot of people in the audience than what I used in my last streams, which was Sea Lion, which actually costs $100 per year. So what you can see here is very humble beginnings. It's really just some test rendering. This is the mouse coordinates and this is the frame time. And so when we hit on start, what we see is, I will show you because you don't see it. I need to show a new window here, which is my console output. Let's call it the game console, and it is called, I think this is what it is called. Yes, here we go. Okay. So I will probably make it a little bit smaller, but you should still be able to see things. Where do we put this? I have no idea. I don't know. I have no idea. Let's put it here. Who cares? Who cares if there's my logo or not, right? I mean, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But anyway, and let's put that somewhere where we can still see the code if we're debugging. Maybe something like that. I mean, let's make it a little bit small. And anyway, it's not really interesting in a way now. Still, I want to keep the ratio somehow. Yeah, okay. So let's say here is my game window and here is my console output, and maybe I shouldn't spend so much time with that, right? Who cares? I do. So my game window is on top. It's nicely on top. Okay, now it's on top. And the game console is also, yeah, let's put it like that. Let's make it like that. Okay, anyway, what you will see is if I click on my button, I already recognize that the button is clicked. But now the question is what should happen, right? So what should be going on here? Another several options. One is we kind of hard link together like we make the main menu aware that there is a game and the main menu class calls the game and tells, hey, look, I'm ending, stuff like that. But I was thinking, hey, let's do something maybe a little bit more fancy. Let's make a small event system here. Why not? And let's probably not so much hard link those different components together, right? So the sorry, the menu don't necessarily even need to know that there is a game, and probably that makes it a little bit more or less hard coupled, right? Not so tightly coupled. That's how you say it in English. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking we will do some kind of little event bus system. So it's like something that is neutral, that sits between every every sender and every receiver, and everybody can literally post to it in my game, and everybody can subscribe to any events. So yeah, let's see how far we come with that today. It's probably, I have to be honest with you, probably there is not so much eye candy today. I mean, who knows? Maybe it is. Anyway, but I guess I will just jump into this event bus system, and let's probably just write a small message for anyone who joins in here. Hello and welcome. Today we work on an event bus system in our little custom C++ game engine. It shall enable communication between different components. And the minimum goal for today is to allow the main menu to tell the game when the start button has been clicked. I mean, that's our absolute minimum goal. And yeah, let's see how that goes. Okay, so let's come up with a class, which, no, it's the wrong place. We call it event bus, right? So it will have at least the following methods. But let's define the API. We want to subscribe, and later we'll probably allow to subscribe for kind of specific events only or stuff like that. But now we just subscribe, and we'll do this pretty old school and kind of pretty heavy-handed object-oriented stuff, more like Java Enterprise style, like probably we will just... So what I'm thinking now is, do we need a full interface, like event listener, or do we just add some... function here? It's probably enough. Yeah, let's just give it a function. I think it's called standard std function, if I am not totally mistaken. I think it's called function. It is a standard function which takes which is a void function, I think, and it just gets an event. Let's call it game event. Let's call it game event. And returns nothing. Yeah, no, that's it. This is the event handler. That's it. And the game event, we just need to define, let's call it a struct. Probably has an event type, and it has some data, right? And we will have an enum class here called event type. Wow. Game start. Game exit. Game start pressed. While I'm doing that, I'm not totally sure if that's really a good idea. Settings pressed. It's all very specific already. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but let's just see how far we come, right? I mean, it's Saturday evening. Who cares? Let's see. What can we do? Where's my Coke? Where's my Coca-Cola? Okay. Yeah. Whatever. We can then invent new events all the time, right? Yeah, so what we need for sure is some place to store these event handlers, right? And we will just, I'm just thinking, let me quickly check if I can somehow alias this. Oh, it is in this. Hey, Vossi, long time no see. Yeah, I'm good, I guess. Yeah, live paid, not paid, but ask it's toll, I guess. So, how are you doing? How are your adventures going? How's your refactoring going? Still on it? Or are you up for something completely different now? Yeah, no, I was a little bit, yeah, I was busy. Not a little bit, but really busy. And I also tried to kind of learn how to do other types of video content. And then I had to dig into that, and then I just had no energy left to do the streams. But yeah, today I felt, oh my God, I have to do it once again, so that people do not completely forget about me. And yeah, and I was feeling to do it today. Although it's super hot here, I don't know, 35 degrees or something still. So yeah, kind of kind of tough, but yeah, let's keep pushing. Yeah, but you didn't miss anything, right? So that's a good thing. The bad thing is I didn't stream, but at least you didn't miss. Oh yeah, that's a good thing. Directory 12. Yeah, I'm planning actually also a YouTube tutorial series on that. Um, I'm not sure about live streaming that. I found it quite it's quite involved. I feel. Um, and yeah, I've done and I think you also did some your share bit of Vulkan. I think I remember. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, it's quite similar actually, and both are quite quite heavy. I think it's actually not so hard to understand. In some ways, even kind of more logic than something like DirectX 11 or OpenGL because it's not so much magic or something. But on the other hand, it's just very verbose, right? I mean, you just have to get everything really always right. But yeah, I think it's kind of the in today it's the ultimate experience to learn how the GPU works. I mean, it's like as close as you can get, like for for us normal non GPU driver guys, whatever. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not totally sure if it's really due to synchronization. I mean, it could be. I mean, my little experience, that kind of thing is then um it kind of crashes out really if you're really kind of wrong in the synchronization because you get this kind of um wrong error rights or something, and it really kind of freaks out. But yeah, I mean, it might be something more subtle, and it could be the case. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely no expert in all the symptoms that this can have, but I mean, my little experience was a little bit like it either completely crashed or nothing was showing at all. But I mean, yeah, it could be like a little bit of a race condition where sometimes you kind of get the synchronization right, and the next two frames you don't, or something like that. Yeah, it could be the case. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And just copying the texture. Yeah. I always found it kind of interesting that even in like in the official tutorials, but it's probably the easier thing to do that they are kind of always suggesting to create these new command lists like almost every frame, if I'm not mistaken. You have this command list heap and you have to allocate and you can probably not create the commands, but at least fill it every time. And I felt it very natural to have it only filled at once because I think that's in a game, that's what you want to do, like that you strive for that all the time. And I mean, you still have to, of course, do all the barrier things. You have all the transitions from like reading from the texture, then whatever. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think I mean, I'd kind of try to have everything as stable as possible, if you know what I mean. Like to have, like to go really to the extreme to say, well, in the ideal case, I don't want to touch any command list, not at all anymore. But I know in a real game that would not be the case for every object. But like let's say this is the utopian goal, and then and when I had that, it actually kind of worked pretty much pretty well, kind of like pretty much like gears. Everything was kind of clicking together. But I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so much variables in play here. So yeah, it could be literally anything in this kind of things. But I also got some comment on YouTube from a guy who said, yeah, DirectX 11 is nice, but DirectX 12 is probably is much more fancy and much more interesting. So yeah, I mean, anyway, maybe I will just screw the DirectX 11 route in anyway, if nobody's interested in that, which I would also understand because it's kind of a dead technology essentially. And just also dive into DirectX 12, so then we could kind of also live discuss these kind of issues. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so you got the debug layers. Yeah, I think that's absolutely necessary in that scenario. Okay, you got a okay. Two threads are found to be executed with some of the same command list. That is okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yep. 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 Yeah. I mean, I would say, I mean, that's kind of the classic generic issue, if you want, right? I mean, that's kind of this is the kind of bug you buy into when you do Vulkan or directory type. Or I wouldn't even call it a bug. I mean, yeah, it's a bug, but it's more like the kind of challenges that you sign up for, right? Yeah. I mean, I just felt like it's always this thing because there is this one side in me that always kind of like wants to write it in assembler, right? I mean, and kind of have full control and be totally nerdy about it and be totally kind of even paranoid and have everything really under control. And on the other hand, I also try to be a little bit more result oriented and actually kind of show a game or yeah, have some end result and not just code around for a year and there's nothing really to show. So and then I had this feeling. The point where I'm getting at is besides, of course, understanding how everything works, which is kind of interesting in itself. It's just like worth it probably by itself. But to have to really get the payoff, I feel that it really is kind of necessary that your game or whatever application you're writing is heavily multi-threaded and you have really you're pushing all the cores to the limit and you just don't want your GPU to be the bottleneck and to be in your way. And you have this sophisticated scheme of where you know how to build different command lists and then kind of synchronize them together when you commit them to the GPU. And as long as you don't have that, it's kind of it's just a learning exercise. And I'm all in for learning exercises, But it's just like for the end result, it kind of stand in my way probably because I have so much boilerplate code and then just probably running on one or two threads. But yeah, but it's I mean it's the learning experience itself, absolutely. Yeah, I think and I think it's yeah. I think UE4 was kind of very much famous or infamous for being kind of single-threaded in a lot of critical areas. And I think even UE5 I think it's much, much better. But I think they have still this kind of single render thread, or how they call it, architecture. And I can imagine, I mean, if you have trillion lines of code, it's not so easy probably to change the architecture from one day to the other, I guess. It's funny, yeah. So, but if I may ask, so if you mention Unreal Engine 5, so how deep are you in there? Because it's normally probably, so is this an error that you get by just using the engine, or are you writing a plugin, or are you just playing around with the actual source code of UE5, or how come that you get to this kind of error? Or is it something that shows up in your UE5 editor and you just happen to see it? Which I guess is probably. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So you do a DLL injection essentially, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 So I guess this is for the crosshair genie then, right? So you want to run under UE5 games, I guess. So this is a professional problem for your product. Nah, okay. Okay, I thought because it sounded a little bit like that. Like, because I think I remember you told me that for CrossFit you actually do not do DLL injection, if I remember. So, yeah. Sorry for confusing that probably, because I think I remember you told me you're not doing that, right? So, oh, okay. Like for VR or okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. I see. Okay, but without glasses, okay. But how is this done then? I mean, how do you? I know the term now, but I think you have to kind of what's it called, like polarization or something? Because normally you had this what was it, blue and red colors, glasses. So how would that work? Because even if you render two images, I mean, how do you kind of? Because I think you always have to filter out kind of like the images per eye or something. Okay, I mean, I'm a total idiot. I mean, in that in this, so maybe I and I leave. Okay, yeah. I remember because like 200 years ago, I don't know, there were these monitors which I think they only existed for 1 year, but nobody bought it. And but I happened to have one, and you had these glasses. It was like in cinema, right? So you had to wear these glasses, and then it was that was the trick. Yeah, because I really have no idea. So if you just look on a flat screen, and even if you somehow kind of, because how do you transport the different images to the different eye? It's kind of interesting in itself, I guess. Besides all the direct to the 12 shenanigans. Just let me have a quick look at that. Steam, Epic, GOG, Xbox Live, and it automatically applies a custom 3D profile when you use it to launch support games. So I'm just quickly looking at it. I'm not. I will not look the whole thing up. Because one of its two different 3D modes that boil down to that totally looks 3D and that kind of looks like a pop-up book. By the way, did you catch the glaring issue with that last sentence? 150 games. Now Acer says they're always adding more, but they are relying on depth. We can skip this. Oh man, there is a really nasty shadow on some stuff. And some of the reflection. Okay, I mean, it's interesting. I've actually not heard of this before. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I will have to study that. So yeah, interesting. Interesting. I mean, just the 5 seconds I got now from Linus is that it doesn't seem to work already fully, right? I don't know, but I literally just watched it 15 seconds now, just to not completely hijack the stream with me watching a video. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yeah. Okay, 9:43. Let's try that. 9:43. I think I can do 9:43. 3D works quite well in it. Oh yeah, the 3D looks freaking awesome in this game. And what's interesting is I'm not getting any of that weird crosstalk. I think that may have just been down to that previous game. Like you're still going to get a little bit of motion blur compared to if you had an OLED, but the crosstalk seems like it was just an issue with that last game and the way that it was handling something. I wish you guys were experiencing this with me. Like this is the kind of thing a friend comes over and you show them. Wow, I mean that's kind of impressive, yeah. Yes, yeah. Wow. I mean it's yeah. I mean I see this, but of course, I mean it's a YouTube stream. I watch it and so on and so forth. And like there's 10 layers between now what Linus sees and what I see, but it's like the feel, yeah, it's really kind of looking 3D. I mean it's I mean you see this kind of like looks like the ghosting of temporal anti-aliasing at some places, which probably some artifacts you cannot avoid probably. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. But I mean I still have no idea how that works. Yeah. Okay, so it tracks the eyes. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it kind of, I mean, is it true to say that it kind of manipulates the image based on where your eyes are pointing at, something like that, so that it kind of like it presents a customized image for your eye configuration, essentially, right? Okay, cool. Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. I mean, that's wow. Yeah, that kind of flew under the radar for me, although the video has 1.3 million views, so some people saw it, obviously. So, wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can imagine like very abstract imagination that you can probably set that up. I mean, I have no idea how to do that, but it's okay. It sounds, I mean, it's like, it's thinkable that, yeah, I mean, if you know at every instance where your eyes are looking, you can probably manipulate the image in a way that it that you have this kind of stereoscopic viewing. Yeah. Okay. Wow. It's cool because that would also be. I mean, I think it's awesome for any game anyway, but yeah, especially also like simulations, whatever, flight simulator, race simulators, because now you have to wear these. Because this is where the VR headsets really shine, kind of, and then where you really have a sizable advantage by seeing in 3D, because the jump and run game he's playing, I think it's super cool that you see probably into the distance, but it doesn't really kind of pay off, I think, in terms of gameplay. So I mean that's really cool. Yeah. Oh, well, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, you never learn. You never end up learning. You never end learning. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. So it's probably just do that. Let's declare that as a little type here. And then we can say what is actually subscribing here is an event handler. And what we are storing here is also event handlers. That might make sense. I just lost my chat. Oh, where's my chat? Where is my chat? Where's my chat gone? Here's the chat. Okay, so you were really involved in it. Okay, wow, I didn't even know that. Okay, wow. Okay, so you really worked on that technology for real. Wow, cool. So you really know the inside out, essentially how it works, right? Or at least whatever you had to know. Wow, cool. Kudos. Cool. But it sounds like how you tell it is like it's some time ago, kind of, but it's like it's still new technology, right? I mean, it's not really out there in the world. I mean, it's probably out there, but it's not like everybody's using it already, or can you buy it like regularly, easily, or is it? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I fully understand. I think money is important, but I think what is you can see it as an investment because you can have this now in your CV. You can tell about it. You can talk about it. You have learned probably a ton of stuff working on it, and I think it's kind of natural to be eager to work on cool stuff, right, and challenging stuff. So all good, I would say. And I think like with the money, it's not always like coming immediately, but you can see it as an investment, and yeah. So, but it's kind of like over, so your job is done. I mean, like whatever you had to write there is kind of done, because my experience is normally with these kind of projects. I mean, I've not worked in something like that, to be honest, but normally, there's always things to do, like, and you don't even imagine that you would have to do them in the first place. But yeah, when things go closer to production, you learn there's a lot of small or big issues even, and so yeah, yeah. And I think especially I think when there's a very challenging project, sometimes you have the feeling, or I think it's even true, that you don't learn so much in this project, and you feel like probably it's a little bit over your head, maybe. But it takes whatever 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or however it takes, and you feel like you're almost drowning. You're not a good enough swimmer, kind of. But then when the project is over and you kind of survived it, and then there's a little bit of a kind of a break, and I mean not necessarily you don't work or something, but it's like you're doing probably something else. And then after whatever, a little bit of time, you feel okay, now everything had kind of time to process in the brain. And now you feel like, okay, wow, I really learned a lot now. And now my next project, I feel I'm approaching it differently. But while you're doing it, it doesn't feel like you're learning, because you're always, every day is just survival. I mean, that's like what it was for me. But you then accumulate the knowledge. But I think it's like a lag. I think it just takes time to really kind of be in the area of your brain where you can actually kind of actively use it. That's how I think of it. might be stupid, but that's how I feel it. So when you do these projects, in a moment you don't feel like you're learning crazy a lot, but then after, if you look back, like after 2, 3, 4 years, you feel, wow, I'm like a different person. I'm like a different developer now. I learned so much, and probably I would not do it completely differently than I did back then. But yeah, that's also why I like to, if it's possible, but you can do it for hobby projects. You can go back to the project you did 1 to 10 years ago, whatever, and you can look at it, and you see it's like in a role-playing game, when you go to an area where there's only low-level mobs, and you then see, wow, okay, I'm so much stronger now. I can see the problem with different eyes now, and I can tackle it differently. So yeah, it's nice. Yeah, full circle is also a thing. Yeah, yeah. Personal, you mean because it's like it's just a personal project, or and just because you're interested in it, or personal in like it touches you more on a personal level, and it's kind of like you. Uh, but I suppose it's more like, you mean it's more like a private project, I guess. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you get these kind of contracts, it's of course preferable, but sometimes maybe it's not possible. I mean, I don't know how easy that is, but if it's like, I I have the feeling that most of, let's call it, freelance contracts are mostly exclusive, I guess. And it's even kind of understandable for me, like from the party that is kind of hiring you, like it's minimizing the risk. It's probably not what you want, and it's, yeah, doesn't sound good, but kind of, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's a norm, right? I would say, I think, to do have exclusive. So, but if you have something that is non-exclusive, oh, that's cool. Okay, okay. So it's like time limited. Is that what you mean? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, but if it's two, it's I think it's semantically correct to say we, right? So yeah, all good. Mhm. And you say a shader dev because you are not a shader dev. You don't want shaders, or is it like? I mean, it's always good to have help. Anyway, I'm just joking, but it's more like. Ah, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, it's always. I think this is. Yeah, I think that's how it works, right? I mean, you just make these contacts, and absolutely, yes. Yeah, I agree. And then especially also in kind of in terms of relationships, let's say professional working relationships, whatever, you learn someone, you get to know someone in whatever special circumstance. You get to know him at a whatever game developer conference, and there's nothing really happening, but you just, I don't know, talk. But then you probably catch the person in a stream, for example, or you see the person in a video they do or whatever, and you can just drop a comment and you can kind of relate. And yeah, and then new things can grow out of that, right? So and so I think like every event in life kind of can have a significance, right? Even if it looks very small in the moment. But yeah, you can get to know your shader dev at some occasion, and later it turns out that the shader dev is a very important piece of your puzzle, right? Because you have the most cool shaders in the industry, essentially, right? And people buy your games because, I mean, the shaders are just completely out of this world, right? So I'm just making these bad jokes because I'm a bad shader dev. I'm treating shaders like they are a necessity, and I always look up how I write them, and I kind of hate it that there are shaders. Although I mean it's cool they run the GPU, but you cannot debug them, at least not easily. And yeah, it's like this really feels like Stone Age to me. Like you have to upload it to some dark hole, some black box, literally, and then yeah. I mean, I know with the debug layers you get some quite nice error messages, but I would like to step through them, which yeah, just not possible. Yeah, I mean the math thing is, yeah, I think it's the old issue where a lot of people are kind of a little bit afraid of math, and I also didn't like math in school, but I mean I got to like it much more than later when I just tried to understand it because I had a need for it. And I had this more practical approach because I wanted to solve this kind of practical problem in my game, whatever. And then I had this motivation to learn the math behind it because I always wanted to understand it, not just copy paste some shader code from somewhere, from Shader Toy, whatever. Like it's totally weird stuff. If you don't understand it, it's like this long formula, but then the light looks good or not, and you have no idea what it even does. So, but it's hard sometimes. I mean, I won't lie. It's it's hard, yeah. So I think why shader dev is actually kind of a thing, right? I mean, like in its own right, where you have all this mathematical knowledge, and you know how you can achieve a certain effect, and hopefully also be efficient with it, and be be very knowledgeable of how the GPU works with all the parallel stuff, so that you like the only thing that I really kind of know is like some do's and don'ts, and one of the don'ts is I think you shouldn't branch out because I think it's kind of killing the parallel capabilities, stuff like that. It's better to kind of have an implicit formula than to say, well, if this then that, and if this then that. Just try to kind of bring everything into one mathematical formula, and there is no if or whatever, but it's just calculating the right thing with the given parameters, stuff like that. And I think you can go really deep there, which I never did. I'm happy if I'm able to write some basic lighting shaders and some vertex skinning shaders, and yeah, and I mean that's not hard, but I'm happy to do that already. So I think it's pretty practical to have someone do that. Yeah. I think what's even more practical, is to probably have some artistic person in your team, or like somehow available if it's not permanent on your team. Because I feel like it's 95% of the success of a game. I mean, there's a lot of luck also, but I think you have to have the right looks and the right sound. But the sound is already, I think it's super important, but it's a little bit harder to convey because the first thing that people see is they see it. So yeah, I so, but I mean, shader dev is kind of like an artist anyway, I guess, because yeah, you can have these nice whatever post-process effects and whatnot. And, um, yeah, I mean, you can really goes a long way because I think it's just psychologically people just see something, whatever in a thumbnail or whatever in a trailer, and if it's visually interesting, it doesn't have to be AAA or whatever, but if it's kind of coherent and visually interesting, I think it's already half the way to success, actually. Like in terms of bringing people to actually be interested. Because if it looks like high school programmers art, I think the truth is that 90% of people just say, oh, yeah, no. And I think that's whatever, it's just psychology. So I think that's actually kind of I think for guys that like, guys, girls, whoever, that just I'm more into the programming side probably since many years. I think it's the biggest hurdle actually, kind of. So if you can get this, you have a shader dev, maybe you get an art person. I think then we probably be unstoppable actually. So let's write our super naive event bus here. This will not rival the best products in the world, but maybe it will do its job. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to extract from the programmable stages of the pipeline, essentially, even without probably being an artist, like in the purest sense, whatever that means, or like someone who, well, whatever, I don't know. Of course, there are many artists who can program anyway, but let's say someone who just does not program, but she's a very good artist, and but if I think really very skilled with shaders, I think even though you probably cannot, whatever, you're not a master drawer or whatever, it's a draftsman, I think it's called, but you still know how to get these kind of effects, whatever, these glitch effects, whatever. And like if you really have this kind of portfolio to do all these super cool things, like, and when you need them and how you need them, and it's not totally destroying your performance, wow, I think that would be really cool. And this is one thing where as a solo developer, I think it's somewhere, I mean, if you're good in that, well, that's fine, but then probably you have some other deficits. But and I feel like this is where I sometimes think, okay, would be cool to have kind of like a small team. Then you could really like leverage it. I think you don't necessarily need whatever 55 people or something, and where you have 10 people that do the same thing or stuff like that. Like, not talking in indie terms, of course, anyway. But if you kind of have this kind of mix of where everybody has kind of strength, and if every strategic position is kind of filled with one person, I think that's what I felt was kind of ideal. And when I started streaming some weeks ago, I was not even feeling so much, and when I was kind of going into this phase where I say, yeah, let's make 2 or 3 games now, let's bring them on Steam, let's stream it. And I was thinking, yeah, to do it solo is kind of actually the coolest thing, because you have everything under control. But then the more I did it, I felt, okay, but it's so lacking in these areas. And you then just feel, yeah, it's just like you only have so many hours per day, and with all the other duties. And it sounds naive, but I was a little bit too optimistic probably to achieve more than is then kind of probably possible. So yeah, but it's good. If you already have a shader dev, I mean, that's already very, very good. Oh yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine how difficult it is. I mean, no, I'm kidding. Of course, I can. I cannot really imagine it in detail, but I have a very good feeling that it must be super complex. Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of have to find out where are these things actually happening. I mean, I'm not sure. I was looking at UE4 some years ago, 6 7 years ago, I think, where I was a little bit more interested in the actual source code, and I was spending, I don't know, it's just a few evenings just like trying to understand and kind of follow through what's going on. Um, and yeah, it's just like with every piece of software, there is just necessarily so much abstraction where it's kind of hard to follow because there is not, you don't easily get to the points, and especially in UE4, I found there is so much macro definitions. It's kind of hard to tell where the actual meat of things is. So yeah, but if you, I mean, I think it really depends. If you just manipulate UV, right? I mean, doesn't it also then depend on what is the current, how is it called? Whatever, wrapping and clamping strategy. And anyway, I mean, but the resolution of the image would still be the same, right? Wouldn't it? I mean, you just kind of, like the pixels on the screen are just the same, right? I mean, you just tell it map a smaller area of the source image to whatever you want to have, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's the case. Yeah, I would say yes. I would say yes. I mean, if you want to kind of spare pixels, right? If you want to save pixels, if you want to kind of do it at a lower resolution, I think you have to change your resolution. I think the UV would not help you there. I think. Yeah, I think that, I mean, I have no idea how they do it. But I guess that they have I guess they change the resolution, scale it up, right? um, and that's, yeah, or don't even scale it up, whatever. But I think you probably have to tackle the resolution itself, because the UV is just, you're just defining the window that you want to map, right? And it's kind of even problematic because I think you're kind of manipulating the actual data, right? Because if you change the UVs, it's like if you have a tiled UV map, right? Then I have different UVs, but I just see part of the image, right? And I think that's not what you want, I guess, because I think you want to see the whole image, but at a lower resolution, right? Exactly. I mean, that's what I was getting at. Yes, exactly. And I was also kind of surprised to learn and to read and to see and to watch in different videos that the fill rate is actually still kind of a bottleneck. So it's not so much the geometry pipeline part, but I also saw a Digital Foundry video. It's not so long ago where they actually said, and they know of statistics where like the majority of people like in the world still play on full HD, like 1080p. It's kind of like the majority, and then there is a sizable number of people who play whatever. What is it? 1400p. But like it seems not to be a real major thing in the world that people play 4K, for example, like for real with 60 frames, and like everybody does it. So, and I guess it's not on the monitor pricing or something like that. I think it's just like the performance is still not there, and that's a resolution, that's a fill rate problem, right? So yeah, and I mean, and for you, then if you have stereoscopic, yeah, of course, you have two times the strain. So that is completely nuts. Yeah. And I think that's a problem with VR as well, right? Because you have the double whammy. You have to render everything double. And I think the problem with VR especially, and maybe also with this kind of product, is that, I mean, I don't know why in VR, but maybe it's so close to the eye, or I don't know, or maybe it's the stereoscopic thing, but I had the feeling, and I played around with VR quite a bit, that you're even more sensitive to frame drops. And if it's not, I think the golden rule is 90 frames at the minimum for VR. Otherwise, you get motion sick and whatever, like more easily. And you can get motion sick anyway. But probably also with this kind of tech, if you have whatever, not a very high frame rate, it's probably getting you a little bit uneasy. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think the question is where in the pipeline you change it really, right? I'm just thinking where this would be a problem, or if it is a problem. So I guess there is some point in the pipeline where there is probably some expectation of what this and that texture, what the resolution of the texture is. So if somewhere in the engine it was kind of like announced in with a different resolution and you just change it in between, I'm not sure if that would work out. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with this is, right, that you kind of like when you create a resource in DirectX 12 or Vatkan, I think it doesn't even matter. I think it's very generic. You give it the size, right? And what is normally easily doable, you can. I mean, normally, as long as you just make it smaller, I think you're kind of safe in terms of memory rights, actually, right? So that should have you covered, because that area of memory should be reserved anyway. I just don't know how it works when you actually kind of put it to the rasterizer, because it has to kind of visit every texel, right? And yeah, I just don't know deeply enough, like when this is decided. I guess when you execute you have, I think in DirectX 12, it's called the root signature. You have the pipeline essentially kind of set up. And so I don't know. I think it's kind of, isn't it too late after that? And I think probably when you hook into that this is all already done, right? I don't know. Just to know at which point, like in the pipeline. So are you hooking in before the actual draw call? I guess, right? Yeah, because the root signature, I think it's kind of like it's a bit of a weird name, and I don't remember how it's called in Vulkan, but I think the Vulkan name is much better. I think it's actually called render pipeline in Vulkan, which I think what it is. And I think you essentially tell it, well, I want to have these three textures bound for the shader reading stage. I want this specific frame buffer texture bound to when I write to it, and stuff like that. And I think this is kind of like baked in already, and this brings also the performance. And I think the dimension of the textures is totally part of that, right? So if that is already baked into the root signature, and and I have no idea if that's even true, but if you kind of hook yourself in after that is already decided and announced to the GPU and it's baked in, I don't think it is easily possible to change that without doing crashes, just per definition. But it's like just thinking about it and having no real idea. It's just, I think it's kind of thing you have to try out, really. Yeah. Okay, but you're hooking the creation already. Okay. I see. Okay. No, I think the texture creation is actually, I mean, I think that's the correct place. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Of course, yeah. Just make the app, play around, and then, as you said, you can make your kind of your lab app, kind of, where you can control what the app is actually doing, and then you can hook it anyway, and then you maybe have success, but then you can try to mimic a little bit more, like how is UE5 doing it, and then you can still hook it probably. I think the idea is if you cannot hook it successfully from, let's say, a very simple self-controlled app, I think you have no chance in doing it with UE5, yeah, with trillion lines of code and just 1,000 layers in between. Um, but on the other hand, I think if you can manage to understand it and if you can hook everything in your own app, then probably you have quite a good chance, because then you're just kind of banking on a certain circumstance and you know what you're looking for. And maybe there's not so much degree of freedom, like how different can UE5 do that then? Because I mean, everyone has to obey to these kind of rules, how you build these pipelines, how you do the draw calls. I mean, there's not so much freedom in there, right? I mean, direct 3D12 gives you anyway a lot of freedom, but it's just still, you have to obey these rules. The few rules that are there, you cannot break out, right? So yeah. I mean, the question is just, I mean, I fully agree. Yes, and as I said, I think the failure rate is more of a killer than I was thinking of. So I think that makes sense. Um, I mean, I'm just thinking now very naively about the visual quality. I mean, if it's kind of like substantially smaller, um, do you have any worries for that, or do you have any kind of strategy to? I mean, how do you ensure that it still looks nice? So you just have some kind of whatever naive cubic filtering methods there, or I mean, how do you actually go about reducing the resolution besides reducing the resolution? So, but what do you do, because you have less information to stuff all the pixels in, right? So how do you do that? Yeah, I mean, isn't yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking, isn't what you're trying to do like, isn't it like basic upscaling anyway, right? I think how the upscalers work, right? I think they don't attack the different textures by themselves. I think they just work with the final presented image, yeah, like a post-process effect, right? Like the thing that is just, I think it's completely done. It's kind of about to be presented, but it's not. It's scaled down, and there is even some machine learning algorithms that try to kind of keep the quality like as good as possible, and then they render it. Or I mean, like I think how they actually do it, because you want to see your 4K image anyway, so it's still kind of like a 4K output. I think there's different strategies anyway, but like what I want to say actually is like, did you look into these kind of, I think, established technologies? And I'm not saying you should do it like that, but it's more like how they do it, like checkerboarding, stuff like that. That's around since some years. Is that something that you might, because also there must be some point in the pipeline or right before it, like where they actually do it, because that's all like dynamically done. So there's no artist who is like, I think, doing this offline or something, right? Anyway. Okay. Okay. So it's kind of like the intelligence is probably, it's maybe in the shaders. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what must be the the culprit of it is that you actually already pass less work to the rasterizer, right? And the rasterizer is a fixed function thing. And I think, I'm really thinking it might be stupid, but I think that the goal must always be that you give already the rasterizer less work, right? Or like, let's say, as few work as kind of possible, right? So what I want to say is that I think if the shader is skipping pixels, then you kind of already, it's not as efficient as it could be, because you're essentially like, you're firing up the shader, but it's kind of running through empty, if you know what I mean. I think this, maybe that's the only way to do it. I'm not an up or down scaling expert, but I think the goal would necessarily or ideally be to already be early enough in the lower resolution that the rasterizer only invokes the shader at a lower resolution, right? Because it makes a difference a lot. So yeah. Because I think if I'm like very generically thinking about it, it's a little bit like overdraw, right? This is all something that you want to avoid. You don't want to invoke a shader for something that will anyway be overdrawn in the next by the next object anyway, right? It's just useless energy. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, what I also did already kind of some years ago, or what a lot of people, of course, are doing, like you're really like, and that's maybe achievable, I guess. Like generally every, like the main window resolution essentially is already like, or like viewport resolution, let's call it that, is already much reduced. Yeah. So you are not running full HD, you're running 720p. And I think it's easily achievable because you're not so much on that fine grained level. It's just you rent everything out and then you just blow it up. It's also nice for anti-aliasing, and it's just, or it can also give you some whatever blurry effect. I mean, it's like that's and then it's just like filtering this upscaling step, like however you want and how sharp you want it and whatever. But I think, isn't that kind of like the most intuitive way to go? I would say. And you mentioned like keeping it in the same window. I think it. I mean it. For the end user, it is always the same window. Like okay, the end user wants to play it in 1080p. Okay, sure. But like, I render everything always in a viewport of 720p. I can easily do that. But that's not what the user will see. And in RenderDoc, you would see all these calls. They are still made in 720p. But when I render my last full screen quad, this is a 1080p resolution where I render it in my back buffer viewport. But all my frame buffers are 720p. I mean, now I'm just talking about like my own engine, whatever, right? Or your own app. But I think this is kind of easy to do. I'm not talking about the case where you hook into an existing engine and it does all different strategies, and wherever the decision is taken, when to upscale, when to downscale. I don't even know how to hook up into FSR. I think the AMD documentation is actually quite nice. I was interested in that once. I read it while I was commuting, and I thought, okay, that's actually, yeah, kind of seems logic. But so this is also something that comes into play, right? I mean, UE5, in which kind of mode are you? Is it like, depending, you're on an NVIDIA card and there is whatever, some DLSS shenanigans going on? Is it FSR? Is it no scaling technology at all at the moment? So are you sure about that? Or what is the setup? Is it like, and I guess it should work probably under all the circumstances, but I guess you have to kind of filter out all these different scenarios. To try it in one ideal scenario, probably no upscaling at all from UE5, because that could make it even more complicated. Because if you're in the wrong spot and you are reducing the resolution, but then whatever their FSR hook kicks in, and they are probably destroying what you have just done in terms of like whatever, bringing up the resolution again because they have a different expectation somewhere in memory. I don't know. So but anyway, I think it's a good idea that you say you have this kind of small little laboratory app where you have that under control. Yeah, you say, yeah, and you know that there is no FSR, there is no DLSS now going on. I'm just purely rendering like straightforward, no internal upscaling or whatever. You just try to hook into your own little app and try to do it from the outside. But I mean, technically, if you hook a DLL, you're inside anyway. Um, you're part of the process. But you know what I mean? And I think because then it really only gets more complicated, right? When you're just directly going to UE5. But maybe you know, but I guess you don't really probably know at that moment what other kind of environmental effects are at play. Or maybe you do know. I don't know. I wouldn't even know now in UE5 how I can completely like turn off FSR for sure. And then I know there is 1 million command line settings and whatever, and they have this. They also have this command language inside the engine, and you can turn things on and off. But I wouldn't know, but you might, of course. Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, of course, of course, yes. Sure. It's just like you just you don't lose, you use lower resolution textures. I mean, it's, yeah, sure. Just the question how bad they look. I would be a bit concerned about that, but I've no idea. Maybe that's not a problem. Yeah, yeah. I mean, 10%. The game looks very, yeah. I mean, that's what I mean, because probably you have seen this effect. I mean, that's because you play any game, whatever, if it's 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, whatever, I don't know, and you just really turn on a very low texture resolution, like really extremely low, and that really that really makes everything look totally horrible. Yeah. So texture resolution really is a thing. That's why I'm kind of like a little bit sensitive about it. So I think it's like turning a kind of a dangerous knob, right? Okay, but yeah, yeah, because I think you would be non-selective, like you would hook every texture, right? Every creation, whatever, you reduce it by 50%. I'm just making a number up, right? Something, I think this is the idea, right? Because yeah, you would not know if this is a texture that is spanning a terrain or if this is a texture that is the face of a character. You would just reduce it by whatever amount and hope the best. Okay, so you mean, like, if I understand correctly, you're saying it's not even preferred to have this kind of super high resolution, right? It's not even like it would even be detrimental to the quality. Is that what you are saying? Like, so it's not only for the performance game, but it's also, it's kind of like you actively want to have a lower resolution, right? Is that so, as a feature, kind of like for this technology, or stereoscopic, that you say, it's probably less jarring for the eye. Yeah, okay. And I mean, probably the argument is also that if you say, well, if I mean, if you know that the base resolution is 4K, and you can, of course, easily find that out, I guess. You can just inspect the width and height of the texture, I assume, in your hook. And then you can, it's still good enough, right? I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, you just reduce that and it's probably good enough. Yeah. So. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the more I think about it, yeah, I mean, the more it kind of makes sense. So I guess your idea actually was simple. I think so. You really just said, okay, I hook into every texture creation, then I just chop it down by 50% and then send it along the pipeline. I don't care. Like, I mean, I guess this was like the basic simple idea, right? This was the quick win idea, I guess, right? Cut all the resolution in half. Just don't mess with the actual output anyway. So you do not like help with that, but you just say, well, we're just essentially reducing all the 4K textures to whatever be like in the full HD range, something like that. Okay. Yeah, okay, and it crashes. Okay. Yeah, something exactly. Yeah, I guess what I would call is there is some expectation of another resolution, right? And yeah. But I mean I can just stress once more. I think it's really the best idea that you try to get this to work in your most simple application that you can think of. Yeah. Yeah, and whatever loading times in UE5 universe, because I have the feeling that the Unreal Engine is finding a lot of opportunities to let the user wait um, for whatever the engine does and the editor does, and whatever. It's so I think it would be much more lightweight for you to do that, right? So I mean, actually, this one thing, this waiting time, is kind of my biggest motivation to do my own thing, because it's just, even if I have to compile my 50 files here, it's still so much quicker than to just fire up Unreal Engine if you don't have an atomic reactor under your desk. So it's kind of funny to say it now, but I think, because I'm literally thinking every second day, well, maybe I should just use an engine off the shelf and I just make a game. I mean, it's still freaking hard, but like, at least I'm 5 levels further up in the abstraction. But I know that I can't stand this lag fest, right? And it's just that's it, essentially. That's it, because I'm in no way believing I can do anything better than what Unity can, or what Godot can, or what Unreal Engine can. But I mean, yeah, like smaller engines like Godot, they're not that heavy, I have to be honest. But like, especially for Unreal, but it has a huge potential, of course. I mean, you can literally do everything probably, and the source is there. You can read it, you can manipulate it. But still, it's so heavy. I I don't have this much time left in my life, I guess, to wait on Unreal Engine. Um, exactly. I mean, and I think it's especially tough when you do it the first time after you newly install it. I think it takes, I mean, I don't have the biggest machines where I'm developing. It's a laptop. I have a gaming PC. It's a desktop, but where I'm now is a laptop, and it's not a weak one, but it's of course not a beast. And it takes, I don't know, I think the first load takes 10 minutes or something. It's just I can't do it. It's just like wow. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah. But I mean, I also get this kind of fascination to kind of poke with the big whale, and to, so like, essentially what you're doing here, like to try to mess a bit in a sneaky way with the system, and yeah, hook yourself in and try to kind of, but leverage what it can do, and also like acknowledge what it can do, and but still kind of sneak your way into some kind of functionality where you gain something for your product, I call it. some advantage. And I think that's also, I think you learn a lot with that as well. Also, like to deal with this massive thing. So that's good. And hooking is this kind of, yeah, a little bit magic thing, right? Yeah, where you transcend into becoming part of the actual thing itself. And so, yeah, I think it's a learning experience in itself, which is a little bit different than to write something from scratch or something like that, Ellie. But it's still, I think, fascinating, kind of. And you're really there, standing on the shoulder of giants, like literally, right? I mean, you're really becoming, for your special use, because you're becoming part of the big machine. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool in its own right. And you try to be probably very minimalistic. Just do the one thing, just reduce the texture. So, but one question. So, but you did get the hook. So you believe that you got all the callbacks for the texture creation, right? I think so. You're positive that the hook itself is covering all the bases, right? I mean, it's not like you are expecting to be called much more often, but you're not. So you're quite positive about that. Okay. Okay. So all these pieces of data come along there. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. You should theoretically you have everything in your hand, right? Yeah. It's funny. Then it's funny why it fails, right? Um. Yeah. Okay. So you have really you're positive you have the full information essentially at your disposal, right? Sounds like it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Do you use a self-compiled UE5 version where you also have breakpoints in the actual engine running, or is it really just like you have this kind of whatever, like the binary version essentially, and it's like really the black box. You just have the debug layers on DirectX 12, and that's kind of all your diagnostic options at the moment. Because I think exactly that thing, I mean, theoretically, if you can compile it, because I never managed to, because it just took 24 hours and then it was still not finished, so I stopped it. Um, you could kind of, I guess, relatively easily debug it in the engine, right? So, but are you running the non-self-compiled, non-debug version of the engine, or did you really? So, do you have in your Visual Studio, do you have UE5 like fully the full source version, and you can actually you have the breakpoints in the engine? Yeah, okay, okay, because I think that would solve the problem, and that would be probably the ultimate experience on what's actually going on, because then you don't only learn DirectX 12, but you also learn how Unreal Engine uses it, which is not saying that this is probably the best way to use it. I mean, maybe it is because I guess those people are quite clever working there. At least it's one way to use it. And I think you could just really completely trace the error, right? The cool thing is, yeah. And I guess you can also then debug directly there into your hook because it's actually part of the process space. So, um, Yeah, the problem is really the funny thing is that with UE4, this was really not a problem at all. I think UE4 compiled in whatever 40 minutes, 30 minutes. I mean, it's not super quick, but it was absolutely doable. And I debugged it quite a lot when I was trying to study it. And it was still kind of not easy to do in terms of like mental load, but it was kind of really possible to jump from whatever main function and to see what's going on. In UE5, I tried to do the same. I could not compile it, and I think I know a little bit what I'm doing in terms of compiling stuff, but it was just after 28 hours and my computer nearly exploding, I had to stop it because it was not kind of getting anywhere. And then I did a little bit of research in Google, and I found I'm not the only one. It seems like it's working for people, but it's also a lot of time it's kind of not finishing like in in any reasonable amount of time. So I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, as we said several times, just roll your own Direct3D 12 app, which, by the way, anyway, if we say do the most simple Direct3D 12 app that does a little bit of significance where you can actually hook into, I mean, you just need to render a triangle or a quad, I guess, with some texture, right? I mean, that would be the most minimal application in your case. And maybe some nice checkerboard, and then you can see visually if your resolution change actually hits. I mean, that's already, I guess it's already some hours of work to do that, right? I mean, you can literally probably have some AI write the code for you anyway, then it's quicker. Or you can have copy paste some tutorial from the internet, and yeah. But then there's not so much of the learning experience again, right? So, but still, even I think the copy pasting and even getting probably the whatever AI chunks to actually work, I think it's not just copying it and running it. I think it will be some grinding gears, I guess. So, I mean, at least that's my experience with Vulkan and these kind of APIs. So I guess we're almost done. It's already 10:30 here. So I guess it's whatever 9:30 at your place, I guess. Anything else you would like to discuss in the last 5 minutes or so? Anything that's on your mind where I might give my 2 cents? Yeah, I think the you mentioned the testing mindset. I think it's a nice way to put it. Or in any way, I think it's often a good way to kind of have a mindset of something, right? It's like the essence of something, and probably not being dogmatic and like always going the last mile. Like now, everything you do must be test driven and must be maybe test first or something like super religious. But what you took out of it is this kind of mindset and like super micro steps, they pay off. Um, and if that's what brings you forward, is I mean that's super valuable then, right? And it's so I think it's kind of like the picture I have in my mind is like you sometimes you have to do a lot of things, and it's like it's a big thing that you need to do, and you learn a lot, but it's not like you take everything of that and onto your journey because that would be too much. You don't have so much room for this kind of baggage, like it's whatever, call it headroom, headspace, whatever. Um, but you probably learn, let's be extreme, let's say you learn 1 or 2%, that's what you take. And it's but it's still valuable because if you do that 10 times, 50 times, you get a rich portfolio of things. But that doesn't mean that you need to always do all the 5 million things because you don't remember them anyway. Because if there is a lot of details and the technique and the finesse of how you do the test first in different scenarios, whatever kind of application you're doing, if you don't practice that every day, 5 hours, it will get lost, all these small little things. But I think that's fine because I think what is really important normally sticks, right? Without you forcing it. And if that was the way for you to go to this kind of micro step strategy, I can only support that because I'm a fan of that, of the micro steps. And I think I did not get to that via testing necessarily, just out of whatever other circumstances. Doesn't matter, but yeah, it's good. So I think that's kind of the perfect ending note of today's streams. Anyway, thanks to everyone. Thank you, Bossy. It was nice to see you again. Thanks for joining in. Like my first stream after some pause. Thanks for joining me again, bringing up this interesting topic. I think I will think about it now offline. I will also have some eat. Have a nice dinner. I guess it's cold now. Lunch is long over. Have a nice dinner. Have a nice night, and hopefully see you soon. And hopefully see you soon in another stream, which will not take so. It will hopefully not take me so long to do the next one. So have a good time. Have a good night, and see you next time.